When alien forces descended from the stars, humanity faced extinction. Cities burned, armies crumbled, and hope seemed lost. But in the darkest moments of war, the true strength of the human spirit emerges not from weapons or technology, but from an unbreakable bond between two souls willing to sacrifice everything for each other. This is the story of Captain Sarah Chen, an elite sniper whose steady hands had never missed a target, and Lieutenant Marcus Hawk Rodriguez, a fearless pilot whose wings carried humanity's last hope. When the enemy captured the one person who meant everything to her, Sarah faced an impossible choice that would define not just her fate, but the future of the entire human race. Sometimes, love is the deadliest weapon of all. The morning sun painted the sky in shades of amber and crimson as Captain Sarah Chen adjusted her rifle scope for the third time in 10 minutes. Her fingers, steady as a surgeon's despite the chaos around her, moved with practiced precision across the weapon that had become an extension of her very soul. Below her concealed position on the abandoned skyscraper's 42nd floor, the city of New Angeles burned in patches, sending pillars of black smoke into the dawn sky. It had been exactly 18 months since first contact. 18 months since humanity learned they were not alone in the universe, and that their new neighbors had no interest in peaceful coexistence. The Valdorians, as the xenobiologists had named them, were a race of crystalline beings whose technology made human achievements look like stone tools. Their ships moved like liquid mercury through space, their weapons turned matter into energy with surgical precision, and their war machines adapted faster than human tactics could evolve. Sarah pressed her eye to the scope again, scanning the devastated streets below. The Valdorian patrol was exactly where intelligence had predicted. 3 of their spider-like war machines picking through the rubble of what used to be Fifth Avenue, searching for survivors to capture or eliminate. Each machine stood 12 feet tall on 6 articulated legs, their bodies gleaming with an oily rainbow sheen that seemed to shift and flow like living metal. Mounted on their backs were energy cannons capable of reducing a tank to vapor in seconds. Through her earpiece, the familiar voice of Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez crackled with static. "Phoenix Nest, this is Hawk 1. I'm 3 minutes out from the extraction point. How's our welcoming committee looking down there?" Sarah felt the familiar flutter in her chest that Marcus's voice always brought, even after 2 years of missions together. Their relationship had begun as purely professional. She was the best sniper in the human resistance. He was the most skilled pilot still breathing. But somewhere between shared rations in abandoned bunkers and whispered conversations during long watches, something deeper had grown between them. 3 spiders. Just like Intel said, Sarah whispered into her throat mic, her voice barely audible even to herself. 2 patrolling the north corridor, 1 covering the extraction zone. You're going to have to come in fast and low. Maybe use the smoke from the Morrison building to mask your approach. Copy that, Phoenix Nest. Just keep those ugly bugs busy for about 90 seconds, and I'll have our precious cargo out of there before they know what hit them. The precious cargo was Dr. Elena Vasquez, one of humanity's top xenotechnology researchers. 3 weeks ago, her team had finally cracked the encryption on a captured Valdorian data core, revealing information that could potentially turn the tide of the war. The problem was that Dr. Vasquez had been trapped in a collapsed research facility when the Valdorians launched their latest offensive. Sarah's mission was to provide overwatch while Marcus extracted the scientist from the underground complex. Sarah shifted slightly, feeling the familiar weight of her custom rifle. The weapon was a work of art, crafted from salvaged materials and enhanced with recovered Valdorian technology. Its barrel was inscribed with small marks, each one representing a confirmed kill, each one a small victory against the alien invaders. She had stopped counting after 150. Movement on the southern approach, Sarah reported, tracking one of the spider machines through her scope.
Big Ugly is heading toward the extraction point.
You want me to take him down? Negative, Phoenix Nest. We need to maintain stealth as long as possible. Can you redirect him without going loud? Sarah smiled grimly. Marcus always gave her the impossible tasks, and somehow she always found a way to make them work. She shifted her aim to a pile of debris about 50 meters from the spider machine and squeezed the trigger. Her rifle whispered rather than roared, its sound suppressor muffling the shot to little more than a cough. The bullet struck a piece of twisted metal, sending it clattering across the broken pavement. The spider machine immediately turned toward the noise, its crystalline sensors glowing brighter as it investigated the disturbance. Its companions shifted their patrol routes, creating a gap in their coverage just wide enough for a skilled pilot to slip through. Beautiful work, Phoenix Nest. I'm making my approach now. Sarah watched through her scope as Marcus's aircraft descended from the smoke-filled sky. His ship was a hybrid design, built from the skeleton of a human fighter jet and powered by a captured Valdorian propulsion system. It moved with impossible grace, slipping between the skeletal remains of buildings like a ghost made of metal and energy. The extraction went perfectly for exactly 47 seconds. Marcus had just touched down at the entrance to the underground complex when everything went wrong. The spider machine that Sarah had distracted suddenly stopped its investigation and spun toward the landing site, its sensors locking onto the hybrid aircraft. But that wasn't the real problem. The real problem was the massive shadow that fell across the entire extraction zone as something enormous descended from the clouds above. Hawk 1, you need to abort right now. Sarah's voice cracked with urgency as she watched the Valdorian battleship settle into position directly above the extraction site. The vessel was nearly a kilometer long, its hull rippling with the same rainbow sheen as the smaller war machines, but magnified to breathtaking proportions. "I've got the package," Marcus replied, his voice tight with concentration. 30 seconds and we're airborne." "You don't have 30 seconds. That battleship has you dead to rights." Through her scope, Sarah could see Marcus helping Dr. Vasquez into his aircraft. The woman was injured, moving slowly, and Sarah realized with growing horror that there was no way they could get airborne before the battleship's weapons came online. The Valdorian ship's main cannon began to glow, a pulsing red light that grew brighter with each second. Sarah knew from painful experience what that light meant. In less than 10 seconds, everything within a half-mile radius of the extraction point would be reduced to constituent atoms. Sarah made a decision that she knew would haunt her for the rest of her life, however long that might be. She shifted her aim from the spider machines to the battleship's weapon array. It was an impossible shot, nearly 2,000 meters, through smoke and debris, targeting a moving vessel protected by energy shields that could deflect anything short of a nuclear weapon. But Sarah had one advantage that the Valdorians couldn't account for. Her rifle wasn't entirely human technology anymore. 3 months ago, she had personally killed a Valdorian sniper, a crystalline being whose weapon had been capable of punching through their own energy shields. With the help of the Resistance's tech team, she had integrated the alien weapon's core systems into her rifle. The result was a hybrid weapon that fired projectiles wrapped in the same energy signature as Valdorian technology. "I love you, Marcus," she whispered into her mic, knowing it might be the last thing she ever said to him. "Sarah, what are you—" She pulled the trigger. The shot took 3.5 seconds to reach its target. Sarah watched through her scope as the energy-wrapped bullet struck the battleship's main weapon array just as it reached full charge. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire forward section of the alien vessel erupted in a cascade of crystalline fragments and raw energy. The explosion lit up the morning sky like a second sun. The battleship, suddenly unbalanced, and with its main propulsion systems damaged, began to list to one side. But even as it fell, its remaining weapons came online, sweeping the area below with deadly energy beams. Sarah saw Marcus's ship lift off just as the first energy beam carved a molten line across the ground where he had been standing. His hybrid aircraft climbed desperately, trying to reach the safety of the smoke clouds above, but the damaged battleship was falling directly toward him. For a moment that stretched like eternity, Sarah thought she was going to watch the man she loved die. Then Marcus did something that defied every law of physics she understood. His ship suddenly reversed direction in mid-air, diving back toward the ground just as the battleship's massive bulk passed through the space where he had been climbing. The alien vessel struck the ground with a sound like thunder, sending a shockwave that shattered windows for miles around. When the dust and debris finally settled, there was nothing left of the extraction site, but a crater filled with twisted metal and glowing crystal fragments. Sarah held her breath, her eye pressed to the rifle scope, scanning desperately for any sign of Marcus's aircraft. The radio was silent except for static, and for a terrible moment she thought she had saved no one. Then a familiar voice crackled through the interference. "Phoenix Nest, this is Hawk 1. Package delivered safely, and thanks for the fireworks show." That was some seriously impressive shooting. Sarah felt tears she hadn't realized she was holding back stream down her cheeks. "Are you hurt? Is Dr. Vasquez okay?" "We're both shaken, but intact. That battleship came close enough that I could see my reflection in its hull, but your shot brought us the opening we needed. How did you even know that would work?" Sarah wiped her eyes and began the process of disassembling her rifle for transport. "Lucky guess. We can analyze the science later. Right now, we need to get out of here before their backup arrives." As she packed her equipment, Sarah reflected on how much their world had changed. 18 months ago, she had been Captain Sarah Chen of the United States Marine Corps, a sniper with a perfect record and a bright future. Now she was a ghost fighting an impossible war against enemies whose technology made them seem like gods. But today, for the first time in months, she felt something that had been missing from the war effort: hope. Her shot had proven that the Valdorians weren't invincible. Their shields could be penetrated, their weapons could be destroyed, and their ships could be brought down by human ingenuity and determination. More importantly, she and Marcus had completed their mission. Dr. Vasquez was safe, and the information she carried might finally give humanity the edge they needed to turn this war around. Sarah made her way down the abandoned stairwell, her gear packed and her mind already planning their next move. She had no way of knowing that the Valdorians had been monitoring all human communications during the extraction, or that they had identified her as the shooter responsible for bringing down their battleship. She had no way of knowing that, even as she walked toward the rendezvous point where Marcus would pick her up, alien forces were already moving to capture the human who had dared to wound their pride. The war was about to become very personal. 3 hours later, Sarah stood on the deck of the Resistance carrier Defiant, watching the sunset over the Pacific Ocean. The ship was humanity's mobile command center, a converted aircraft carrier that stayed constantly on the move to avoid Valdorian detection. Its flight deck had been modified to accommodate the hybrid aircraft that were humanity's only hope of maintaining air superiority. Marcus found her there, still staring at the horizon. His flight suit was stained with hydraulic fluid and his hair was disheveled, but his eyes were bright with the satisfaction of a mission completed successfully. "Doctor, Vasquez is in medical," he reported, moving to stand beside her at the rail. "The doc says she'll make a full recovery. More importantly, she managed to keep the data core intact during the extraction. Intelligence thinks they can have preliminary results within 48 hours. Sarah nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. That battleship was waiting for us. They knew exactly when and where we were going to make the extraction.
You think we have a leak? I think they're learning to predict our tactics.
We've been using the same playbook for months now. Sniper overwatch, fast extraction, rely on superior human reflexes to get in and out before they can respond. But today, they were ready for us. Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering her words. So what do? We adapt faster than they do. We become unpredictable. We start taking risks that their computer brains can't calculate. She turned to face him, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that he had never seen before. It wasn't fear or doubt. Sarah Chen had never shown either of those emotions in all the time he had known her. What he saw was a kind of fierce determination that went beyond mere military duty. The war is changing, Marcus. We can't keep running and hiding and hoping that someone else will find a solution. We have to start taking the fight to them directly. Before Marcus could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. All senior personnel to the briefing room immediately. Priority Alpha message from home base. They found the briefing room already packed with the Defiance command staff. Admiral Chen Martinez stood at the front of the room, his weathered face grim, as he reviewed the information on his tablet. When he looked up, his expression was troubled. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've just received intelligence that changes everything we thought we knew about this war," he began. "Dr. Vasquez has been working around the clock to decrypt the data core, and what she's found is both encouraging and terrifying." A holographic display materialized above the conference table, showing a three-dimensional map of the local star systems. Red markers indicated known Valdorian positions, while blue markers showed human settlements and military assets. The good news is that the Valdorians aren't the unstoppable force we thought they were. According to this data, they're actually losing ground in conflicts with 2 other alien species in nearby star systems. Their technology is advanced, but it's not unlimited, and their resources are stretched thin across multiple fronts. Sarah felt a surge of hope. If the Valdorians were vulnerable, humanity might actually have a chance. The bad news, Admiral Martinez continued, is that they view Earth as a critical strategic resource. The minerals in our planet's core are apparently essential for their technology, and they're prepared to exterminate every human being to get them. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't a war of conquest or colonization, it was a war of extinction. "There's more," the Admiral said. "According to Dr. Che Vasquez's analysis, the Valdorians are planning a final offensive. They're going to concentrate all their remaining forces in this sector and hit us with everything they have. Intelligence estimates we have maybe 6 weeks before they make their move." Someone in the back of the room asked the question that everyone was thinking: what are our options? Admiral Martinez's expression grew even grimmer. "We have exactly one, Dr. Bowles. Vasquez believes she can use the information in the data core to create a weapon that could disable their entire fleet simultaneously. But it would require getting close enough to their command ship to upload a virus directly into their central computer network. How close? Marcus asked, though Sarah suspected he already knew the answer wouldn't be good. Close enough to touch it. We're talking about a suicide mission, folks. Someone would have to pilot a ship directly into the heart of their fleet, get past whatever defenses they have, dock with their command vessel, and upload the virus manually. The chances of survival are essentially zero. The room erupted in discussion as the senior staff debated the merits of a plan that sounded more like desperate fantasy than military strategy. Sarah listened to the arguments with growing frustration. Everyone was focusing on the technical challenges. How to get past the Valdorian defenses, how to upload the virus, how to maximize the chances of mission success. No one was talking about the human element. Sarah stood up, and the room gradually fell quiet. I'll do it. Admiral Martinez shook his head. Sarah, you're our best sniper. We can't afford to lose you on a mission that might not even work. With respect, sir, you're thinking about this wrong. You don't need a sniper for this mission. You need someone who never misses when it counts. Someone who can make the impossible shot when the fate of humanity hangs in the balance. That's what I do. Marcus grabbed her arm. Sarah, this is insane. There has to be another way. She looked into his eyes and saw her own determination reflected there. You know there isn't. This is our one chance, and we both know it. She turned back to the Admiral. But I won't be going alone. I need the best pilot in the fleet to get me there. The silence in the room was deafening.
Finally, Admiral Martinez spoke. I can't order anyone to take on a suicide mission.
You're not ordering us, sir,
Marcus said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was volunteering for.
We're volunteering. As the meeting broke up and the senior staff began planning for humanity's last desperate gamble, Sarah and Marcus walked out onto the deck together.
The stars were visible now, brilliant points of light against the dark ocean sky. Somewhere up there, an alien fleet was preparing to end human civilization forever. But tonight, for just a few hours, they still had each other. And tomorrow, they would find out if love and determination could triumph over impossible odds. Sarah looked up at those distant stars and made a promise to herself and to the man beside her. Whatever happened in the weeks to come, she would not let humanity go quietly into the night. If this was to be their final battle, she would make sure it was one that the universe would remember. The pilot would need her protection, and she would provide it, no matter the cost. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of preparation and planning. Every day brought new intelligence about Valdorian fleet movements, and every day the picture became clearer and more terrifying. The aliens were indeed massing for a final assault, pulling ships from conflicts across 3 star systems to create an armada unlike anything humanity had ever faced. Sarah spent her days working with Dr. Vasquez and the Defiance tech team, learning everything they could about Valdorian computer systems and the virus that would supposedly cripple their fleet. The weapon existed only in theory, elegant lines of code that looked simple on paper, but represented months of intensive analysis and reverse engineering. The beauty of this approach, Dr. Vasquez explained during one of their sessions, is that it exploits the Valdorians' greatest strength against them. Their technology is so interconnected, so dependent on instantaneous communication between ships, that introducing the right kind of chaos into their network will cascade through their entire fleet. Sarah studied the holographic display showing the virus's projected propagation pattern. What exactly will it do to them? Think of it as introducing contradictory information at the most basic level of their systems. Their ships will receive commands to accelerate and decelerate simultaneously, to fire weapons and power down simultaneously, to maintain formation and scatter simultaneously. The cognitive dissonance will essentially paralyze them. For how long? Doctor and Cho. Vasquez's expression grew uncertain. That's the variable we can't predict. It could be minutes, it could be hours, but it should be long enough for our remaining forces to hit them while they're vulnerable. Sarah nodded, though privately she wondered if humanity even had enough remaining forces to matter. The Resistance had lost 60% of their ships and personnel in the past year. Every victory came at a cost they could barely afford, and every defeat brought them closer to extinction. Meanwhile, Marcus was working with the engineering team to modify his aircraft for the mission. The plan called for a ship that could get close enough to the Valdorian command vessel to establish a direct data connection, but that also had enough firepower to fight its way through the defensive screen. The result was something that pushed the boundaries of both human and alien technology. Marcus's hybrid fighter had been stripped down to its essential components and rebuilt with enhanced shields, more powerful weapons, and a specialized docking system designed to interface with Voldorian ship hulls. "She's fast, well-armed, and absolutely suicidal," Marcus told Sarah as they inspected the modified aircraft. "Perfect for our needs." Sarah ran her hand along the ship's hull, feeling the subtle vibration of the Valdorian power core integrated into its systems. "Have you thought of a name for her?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Phoenix. Because either we rise from the ashes of this war, or we burn trying." The night before their departure, Sarah and Marcus found themselves alone on the observation deck, watching the stars and trying not to think about the fact that this might be their last night together. They had talked about many things over the past weeks: tactics, contingency plans, what would happen if the mission succeeded or failed, but they had carefully avoided talking about themselves, about what their relationship meant, and what they might be giving up. Finally, Marcus broke the silence. "Do you remember our first mission together?" Sarah smiled. "The weapons depot on Lunar Base 7. You were so cocky, insisting you could extract the entire research team in one trip, and you told me I was an idiot who was going to get everyone killed. You were an idiot. But you pulled it off anyway." She leaned against the rail, her eyes distant with memory. "That was when I knew you were different from the other pilots. You didn't just follow orders and hope for the best, you found ways to make impossible things happen. That's what we're going to do tomorrow," Marcus said. "Make the impossible happen one more time." Sarah turned to face him, and in the dim light of the stars, Marcus could see the conflict in her expression. "Marcus, if something goes wrong tomorrow..." "Nothing's going to go wrong. If something goes wrong," she continued, "I need you to know that these past 2 years have been the best of my life. Even with the war, even with everything we've lost, having you beside me made it all bearable." Marcus pulled her into his arms, holding her close against his chest. "Sarah, we're both coming back from this mission. I don't care what the odds are or how many alien ships are waiting for us. We're going to upload that virus, we're going to save humanity, and then we're going to find some quiet place where we can watch sunsets without worrying about energy cannons." Sarah wanted to believe him. She wanted to hold on to that image of a future together, free from the constant threat of extinction. But her sniper's instincts, honed by years of calculating odds and assessing threats, told her that tomorrow would bring challenges they might not be able to overcome. Still, she let herself believe it for one night. She let herself imagine a world where love conquered impossible odds and heroes really did get their happy endings. The alarm sounded at 0500 hours, pulling them from sleep and dreams into the harsh reality of preparation for battle. Sarah went through her pre-mission routine with mechanical precision, cleaning her rifle, checking her equipment, reviewing the tactical parameters one final time. But underneath the professional calm, her heart was racing. Marcus was already in the hangar bay, running final checks on Phoenix. The modified ship gleamed under the harsh lights, its hybrid design somehow managing to look both sleek and predatory. Around them, the crew of the Defiant worked with quiet efficiency, knowing that they were witnessing the launch of humanity's last desperate gamble. Admiral Martinez appeared at Sarah's shoulder as she finished loading her gear into the ship's limited cargo space. "Any final requests, Captain?" Sarah looked around the hangar bay, taking in the faces of the people who had become her family over the past months of desperate warfare. "If we don't make it back, make sure people remember why we tried. This isn't about human superiority or manifest destiny or any of that propaganda nonsense. It's about the right to exist, to love, to hope for something better." The Admiral nodded solemnly. "It will be remembered." 30 minutes later, Phoenix launched from the Defiant's flight deck and began its journey toward the outer system, where the Valdorian fleet waited. The ship's sensors painted a picture of space that would have been unimaginable just 2 years earlier. Hundreds of alien vessels arranged in perfect geometric formations, their crystalline hulls reflecting the light of distant stars. "My God," Marcus whispered as the enemy fleet appeared on their displays. "There are so many of them." Sarah was studying the tactical readout, her trained eye picking out the patterns in the alien formation. "There," she said, pointing to a massive vessel at the center of the fleet. "That's got to be the command ship. It's 3 times the size of anything else out there, and look at the escort formation around it." Marcus adjusted their course slightly, angling Phoenix toward the outer edge of the Valdorian formation. "The plan is still solid. We come in from the night side of that asteroid field, use the rocks for cover, and then make a straight run at the command ship. By the time they realize what we're doing, we'll be too close for their heavy weapons to track us." It should have worked perfectly. Sarah's tactical analysis was flawless, Marcus's flying was inspired, and Phoenix responded to their commands with mechanical precision. They slipped through the asteroid field like a shadow, invisible to Valdorian sensors until they were less than 10,000 kilometers from the command ship. Then everything went wrong in the span of 3 heartbeats. The first sign of trouble was a new contact appearing on their sensors. Not a ship, but some kind of energy field surrounding the entire command vessel. Phoenix's instruments screamed warnings about massive electromagnetic interference as they approached the field. "That's not supposed to be there," Sarah said, her voice tight with concern. "Intelligence never mentioned any kind of defensive screen." "Maybe they added it after we got the data," Marcus replied, fighting to keep Phoenix stable as waves of energy washed over them. "Can we penetrate it?"
Unknown.
"The field is interfering with our sensors. I can't tell if it's solid matter, pure energy, or something else entirely." The second sign of trouble was the sudden activation of point defense weapons all across the Valdorian formation. Hundreds of small energy beams began sweeping through space around Phoenix, creating a deadly web of coherent light. "They know we're here," Marcus announced unnecessarily, throwing the ship into a series of evasive maneuvers that would have been impossible without the hybrid propulsion system. "How is that possible? Our stealth systems are based on their own technology." Marcus had no answer, but Sarah was already working the problem. Her fingers flew across the tactical console, analyzing the Valdorian response pattern and looking for weaknesses they could exploit. The third sign of trouble was the most devastating of all. As Phoenix approached the energy field surrounding the command ship, Sarah realized that they were not alone. Another ship was approaching from the opposite direction, a human resistance vessel that she recognized immediately. "That's the Retribution," she breathed, staring at the familiar profile of Captain Lisa Hendricks' modified cruiser. "What the hell is she doing here?" Marcus followed her gaze and felt his blood turn to ice. Oh no, they're running the same mission we are. The implications hit both of them simultaneously. If 2 human ships were attempting the same infiltration mission, it meant that either there had been a catastrophic breakdown in communications, or someone had deliberately sent multiple teams to ensure mission success. It also meant that the Valdorians were about to realize that humanity was making a desperate final gambit, and they would respond accordingly. The energy field around the command ship suddenly intensified, and both human vessels found themselves caught in a kind of electromagnetic web. Phoenix's engines sputtered as power fluctuations cascaded through its hybrid systems. "Marcus, we need to get out of here," Sarah said urgently. "This is a trap." But before Marcus could change course, space around them erupted in violence. The Retribution, struggling with the same power problems that were affecting Phoenix, suddenly found itself under attack by a squadron of Valdorian interceptors. The human ship's weapons fired desperately, trying to clear a path to the command vessel, but it was heavily outnumbered. Sarah watched in horror as energy beams tore through the Retribution's hull, sending pieces of debris spinning away into space. She could see the ship's life support systems failing, could see Captain Hendricks' crew fighting desperately to keep their vessel operational. "We have to help them," she said, her hand moving toward Phoenix's weapon controls. "If we break cover, we lose any chance of completing the mission," Marcus replied, his voice agonized. "The entire human race is depending on us getting that virus uploaded." Sarah stared at the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities and outcomes. The Retribution was dying, its crew facing certain death if someone didn't intervene. But Phoenix was humanity's last hope, the only remaining chance to strike a decisive blow against the Valdorian fleet. The choice tore at her heart, but her training as a soldier left only one possible decision. "Do it," she said quietly. Marcus looked at her in surprise. "Do what?" "Save them. Open fire on those interceptors." "Sarah, the mission was based on stealth and surprise. We've lost both. But we can still save those people." She turned to face him, her eyes blazing with determination. "That's what makes us human, Marcus. We don't abandon each other, even when the odds are impossible." Phoenix's weapons came online with a low hum that Sarah could feel through the ship's hull. Marcus targeted the nearest Valdorian interceptor and fired, sending a concentrated beam of energy that struck the alien craft amidships. The interceptor's crystalline hull shattered like glass, and the ship tumbled away into the darkness. But their attack had revealed Phoenix's position to the entire Valdorian fleet. Every ship in the formation began turning toward them, bringing their weapons to bear on the small human vessel that had dared to penetrate their defensive screen. "Incoming!" Marcus shouted, throwing Phoenix into a desperate evasive pattern as energy beams filled the space around them. The next few minutes were pure chaos. Phoenix danced between the alien weapons, its hybrid systems pushed far beyond their design limits, as Marcus performed maneuvers that defied the laws of physics. Sarah worked the defensive systems, using every trick she had learned in 2 years of guerrilla warfare to keep them alive for just a few seconds longer. The Retribution was fighting too, its crew using their dying ship's weapons to clear a path through the Valdorian interceptors. Captain Hendrick's voice crackled over the radio, distorted by electromagnetic interference but still audible. "Phoenix, this is Retribution. We've lost main power and life support. Estimate 4 minutes until total system failure." "Acknowledged, Retribution," Marcus replied, still fighting to keep their ship intact under the withering alien fire. "We're working on an extraction." But even as he said it, Marcus knew they were all lying to themselves. There was no extraction possible. The Valdorian fleet had them completely surrounded, and more ships were arriving every minute. Both human vessels were trapped in the energy field around the command ship, their systems failing under the electromagnetic assault. Sarah made another decision that she knew would haunt her forever. "Marcus, get us alongside the Retribution. Transfer distance." "What are you planning?" "I'm going to complete the mission." "Both missions?" Marcus understood immediately what she meant and his face went pale. "Sarah, no. There has to be another way. Look at the tactical display. The Retribution systems are completely fried, but their docking clamps are still operational. If I can transfer to their ship and manually pilot it into the command vessel, I can upload the virus directly through physical contact and die in the process. The crew of the Retribution is already dead, Marcus. Their life support has maybe 3 minutes left. But if I can get aboard and use their ship as a kinetic weapon," Marcus was shaking his head frantically. "I won't let you do it. I won't let you sacrifice yourself." "You don't have a choice," Sarah said gently. "This is what I do, remember? I make the impossible shot when everything depends on it." She was already moving toward Phoenix's airlock, her equipment pack slung over her shoulder and her rifle secured across her back. Marcus tried to follow her, but she turned and placed her hand on his chest. "Your job is to survive this. Get Phoenix out of here and make sure people know what happened. Make sure they know that humanity never gave up, never stopped fighting, never stopped believing in something better." The transfer between ships took place under fire, with Valdorian energy beams creating deadly light shows all around them. Sarah moved through the vacuum of space with practiced efficiency, her magnetic boots finding purchase on the Retribution's damaged hull as she made her way to the emergency airlock. Inside, she found Captain Hendricks and her remaining crew gathered on the bridge, their faces grim but determined. The air was thin and filled with smoke, and Sarah could hear the dying wheeze of failing life support systems. "Captain Chen," Hendricks said, her voice weak but steady, "I assume you're here to complete our mission." "That's the plan." "How much control do you still have over the ship?" "Minimal. We can fire thrusters for maybe 2 more burns, and the structural integrity is shot. But the docking clamps still work, and the computer core is intact." Sarah moved to the navigation console and began plotting a course that would take the Retribution directly into the heart of the Valdorian command ship. It wasn't elegant or sophisticated, just pure kinetic energy applied to the right spot at the right time. "Doctor, Vasquez's virus is loaded into my gear," she announced to the bridge crew. "When we make contact with their hull, I'll have maybe 30 seconds to establish a data connection and upload the code before their defenses destroy us." Captain Hendricks managed a weak smile. 30 seconds to save the human race, no pressure. Through the Retribution's damaged viewports, Sarah could see Phoenix fighting its way clear of the Valdorian formation. Marcus was using every trick in his considerable repertoire, but she could see that his ship was taking damage. Energy beams had scorched Phoenix's hull in a dozen places, and one of its engine pods was dark. She keyed her radio to Phoenix's frequency. "Hawk 1, this is Phoenix Nest. How's your bird holding up?" "I'm still flying, but not for long." "Sarah, please tell me you have another plan." "I have exactly the plan we discussed. You get out of here and let me handle the rest. I'm not leaving you." Sarah felt tears in her eyes, but her voice remained steady. "Yes, you are. That's an order, Lieutenant." There was a long silence over the radio. Then Marcus's voice came back, thick with emotion. "I love you, Sarah. I love you too. Now go." Sarah watched through the viewport as Phoenix disengaged from its docking clamps and began accelerating away from the Valdorian formation. For a moment, she thought Marcus was actually going to follow orders and escape to safety. Then she saw Phoenix's course change, looping back toward the command ship in a trajectory that would bring it alongside the Retribution just as her ship made its final approach. "Marcus, what are you doing?" she demanded over the radio. "What I should have done from the beginning. We're partners, Sarah. We face impossible odds together." Captain Hendricks looked at Sarah with understanding in her eyes. He's not going to leave you. You know that, right? Sarah did know it. She had known from the moment she suggested this plan that Marcus would never abandon her to die alone. It was one of the things she loved most about him, and it was going to get him killed. The Retribution's engines fired one last time, sending the damaged ship on its final approach toward the Valdorian command vessel. Around them, alien interceptors closed in for the kill, their weapons charging for shots that would end both human ships in seconds. But Sarah wasn't thinking about the interceptors or the command ship, or even the virus that might save humanity. She was thinking about a man who loved her enough to die beside her, and wondering if their sacrifice would be remembered by the people they were trying to save. The Valdorian command ship grew larger in the viewport, its crystalline hull reflecting the light of battle like a prism made of starlight and death. In 30 seconds, Sarah would find out if love and determination could triumph over impossible odds. She gripped her rifle tighter and prepared to make the most important shot of her life. The final approach to the Valdorian command ship took exactly 47 seconds, but to Sarah it felt like a lifetime. The Retribution's damaged hull groaned under the stress of acceleration, and warning alarms filled the bridge with their urgent wailing. Through the cracked viewport, she could see the alien vessel growing larger with each passing second, its crystalline surface rippling with defensive energy fields. Captain Hendricks had collapsed at her station, the failing life support finally claiming her strength. But her eyes remained fixed on the tactical display. The rest of her crew worked with grim determination, coaxing the last bit of performance from their dying ship's systems. "Data core is ready for upload," reported Lieutenant Torres from the communications station, his voice strained from oxygen deprivation. "Connection protocols are locked and loaded." Sarah moved to the forward viewport, watching as Valdorian interceptors moved to intercept their approach. Their weapons were charging, preparing to reduce both human ships to scattered atoms before they could reach their target. But Marcus was there too, Phoenix dancing between the alien fighters with impossible grace, drawing their fire and buying precious seconds for the Retribution's final run. "Phoenix, break off!" Sarah commanded over the radio. "You're taking too much damage." "Negative, Phoenix Nest. I'm seeing you through to the end." Through her scope, Sarah could see that Marcus wasn't just taking damage, he was actively sacrificing his ship to protect hers. Phoenix's starboard engine was gone completely, and energy burns scarred its hull like wounds. But Marcus kept flying, kept fighting, kept proving that human courage could overcome any odds. 20 seconds to impact. The Valdorian command ship's point defense systems came online, filling space around the Retribution with deadly energy beams. Sarah felt the ship shudder as several beams found their mark, tearing through already weakened hull plates. Somewhere behind her, she heard Lieutenant Torres cry out as his console exploded in sparks. 15 seconds. Sarah activated the data upload system, feeling the weight of humanity's last hope in her hands. The virus Dr. Dr. Vasquez had created was elegant in its simplicity, but it required a direct connection to Valdorian computer networks. One chance, one perfect shot at the right moment, or everything they had sacrificed would be meaningless. 10 seconds. The command ship's defensive screens flared brighter as the Retribution closed the final distance. Sarah could see individual features on the alien vessel's hull now, weapon ports, sensor arrays, and what looked like docking bays. Their target was a cluster of communication arrays near the ship's main computer core, exactly where Dr. H. Vasquez had predicted they would need to connect. 5 seconds. Marcus's voice crackled over the radio one final time. "I love you, Sarah. No matter what happens next, remember that you made the impossible shot when it mattered most." The Retribution struck the Valdorian command ship at a relative velocity of 8,000 meters per second. The impact should have destroyed both ships instantly. The kinetic energy released was equivalent to a small nuclear weapon, more than enough to vaporize the Retribution's hull and cause catastrophic damage to the alien vessel. But in the microsecond before impact, something impossible happened. The Valdorian ship's defensive screens, designed to deflect energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, created a buffer zone that absorbed just enough of the collision's force to prevent complete destruction. Instead of vaporizing on impact, the Retribution's forward section penetrated the alien hull and lodged deep inside the command ship's superstructure. Sarah found herself thrown against the bridge's forward bulkhead, her equipment scattered and her rifle damaged beyond repair. Around her, the remains of Captain Hendricks' crew lay motionless, claimed by the impact or the final failure of life support. The only sounds were the groaning of twisted metal and the hiss of escaping atmosphere. But incredibly, impossibly, she was still alive. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the wrecked bridge as Sarah struggled to her feet. Her left arm was broken, and she could taste blood in her mouth, but her mind was clear and focused. The data upload system was still functional, its indicators showing a successful connection to Valdorian computer networks. She had 30 seconds before the alien ship's internal defenses would seal off the breach and eliminate the intruder. 30 seconds to upload the virus and complete the mission that had cost so many lives. Sarah's fingers flew across the control interface, initiating the upload sequence that Dr. Rose Vasquez had programmed weeks earlier. Lines of code streamed across the display, each one representing months of analysis and reverse engineering. The virus was elegant and deadly, designed to exploit the very interconnectedness that made Valdorian technology so powerful. 20 seconds. Somewhere in the distance, Sarah could hear the sound of Valdorian security forces moving through the damaged section of their ship. Crystalline voices echoed off metal walls, speaking in harmonics that human ears could barely process. They would reach the bridge soon, and when they did, they would kill her without hesitation. 15 seconds. The upload progress indicator showed 80% complete. Sarah held her breath, willing the ancient computer systems to work just a little faster. Around her, the Retribution's hull continued to groan under stress, and she could see cracks spreading across the viewport that separated her from the vacuum of space. 10 seconds. Movement at the bridge entrance made Sarah spin around, her sidearm appearing in her good hand with trained precision. But instead of Valdorian soldiers, she saw a familiar figure in a damaged flight suit struggling through the wreckage. Marcus? She could barely believe her eyes. How did you... Phoenix's docking clamps, he gasped, moving toward her with obvious pain. Attached to your hull just before impact. Took some doing to get through the breach, but I wasn't about to let you face the end alone. 5 seconds. The upload indicator reached 100% just as the first Valdorian security forces appeared at the bridge entrance. Sarah and Marcus had exactly enough time to look into each other's eyes and share a moment of perfect understanding before the aliens opened fire. Energy beams filled the bridge with coherent light, reducing metal and flesh to their component atoms. The last thing Sarah saw was Marcus's face, peaceful despite the circumstances, as if he had found exactly where he belonged. The virus upload completed successfully 3 seconds after both humans died. Dr. Vasquez had designed her creation well. The code spread through Valdorian computer networks like wildfire, rewriting fundamental system protocols and introducing cascading logic errors. Within minutes, ships throughout the alien fleet began receiving contradictory commands from their own computers. The effect was exactly what she had predicted. Valdorian vessels found themselves paralyzed by their own technology, unable to coordinate their movements or weapon systems. Some ships fired on their own escorts, while others began random acceleration patterns that broke their careful formations. The human resistance fleet, waiting in concealment beyond the outer planets, received Admiral Martinez's signal to begin their attack. Every remaining ship that humanity could field threw themselves at the disabled Valdorian armada, pressing their advantage while the alien vessels were vulnerable. The battle lasted 14 hours and cost humanity another 40% of their remaining forces. But when the fighting ended, the Valdorian fleet was destroyed, their command structure broken, and their invasion force scattered to the solar winds. Captain Sarah Chen and Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez never knew that their sacrifice had saved the human race. They died believing that their mission had failed, that their love story would end in darkness and defeat. But their final act of courage had given humanity the opening it needed to survive. In the weeks that followed, as the resistance began the long process of rebuilding civilization, their story spread throughout the surviving human settlements. They became legends, symbols of the love and determination that had carried humanity through its darkest hour. But legends, Sarah would have said, were for other people. She was just a sniper who never missed when it counted, and Marcus was just a pilot who could make impossible things happen. Together, they had faced the end of the world and chosen to meet it on their own terms. The Valdorians, those who survived the destruction of their fleet, would remember them differently. In their crystalline archives, Sarah Chen was recorded as the human who had brought down their greatest battleship with a single shot, and Marcus Rodriguez was the pilot whose courage had enabled humanity's final victory. They would study the tactical recordings of that last battle for years, trying to understand how two individuals had overcome such impossible odds. But they would never truly comprehend what they had witnessed, because they had never experienced the kind of love that makes any sacrifice worthwhile. Admiral Martinez stood in the Defiance Chapel 3 days after the battle, reading from a list of names that seemed to go on forever. Each name represented a life lost in humanity's struggle for survival, a person who had chosen to fight rather than surrender to extinction. When he reached the end of the list, he paused for a moment before speaking the final words. Captain Sarah Chen and Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez, who taught us that love is the deadliest weapon of all. The survivors bowed their heads in silence, remembering not just the two heroes who had saved them, but all the ordinary people who had done extraordinary things when the future of their species hung in the balance. Outside the chapel windows, Earth turned slowly in space, its blue oceans and white clouds unmarked by the battle that had raged in the darkness beyond. Somewhere on that world, children who would never know the terror of alien invasion were playing in gardens that would bloom again because two people had loved each other enough to die for something greater than themselves. The war was over. Humanity had survived. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered. But this was not the end of Sarah and Marcus's story. Death, it turned out, was not as final as either of them had believed. The Valdorian technology that had killed them was the same technology that had kept detailed scans of their neural patterns in the moments before their destruction. To the aliens, this was merely routine data collection, part of their standard procedure for analyzing enemy capabilities. They had no way of knowing that those neural patterns contained something that transcended mere biological function, the essence of two people who had loved each other completely, who had faced impossible odds together, and who had chosen sacrifice over surrender. Dr. Elena Vasquez, working with captured Valdorian computers in the months after the war, would discover these patterns buried deep in the alien databases. She would spend years learning to decode them, to understand what the crystalline invaders had accidentally preserved, and eventually, she would find a way to give Sarah and Marcus something that neither of them had dared to hope for in their final moments. A second chance, a new beginning, and the opportunity to discover that love really could conquer death itself, but that discovery lay in the future. For now, humanity mourned its fallen heroes and began the long process of healing from a war that had nearly ended their civilization. Schools would be built, cities would be rebuilt, and children would grow up in a world where the sky held promise instead of threat. The price of that future had been paid by people like Sarah and Marcus, ordinary humans who had found the strength to do extraordinary things when their species needed them most. Their names would be remembered as long as humanity endured, symbols of the courage and love that had carried them through their darkest hour. In the military cemetery established on Luna, where Earth hung like a blue jewel in the black sky, two graves bore simple inscriptions. Captain Sarah Chen, she never missed when it counted. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez. He made impossible things happen. Beneath both names, carved in letters that would endure for millennia, were the words that summarized everything they had been to each other and to the human race. Together, they saved tomorrow.
5 years after the Valdorian War ended. Dr. Basilo, hero.
Elena Vasquez made a discovery that would change everything humanity thought they knew about consciousness, death, and the nature of existence itself. She was working late in her laboratory beneath New Geneva, the city built from the wreckage of what had once been the European Federation capital. Above her, the sounds of reconstruction echoed through the evening air. The hum of fusion generators, the clatter of construction drones, and the voices of children who had never known the terror of alien invasion. The war had left scars on the world and its people. But humanity was healing. The population was growing again. New technologies were emerging from the fusion of human innovation and captured Valdorian systems. And for the first time in years, people dared to make plans that extended beyond mere survival. But Elena could not forget the price of their victory. She had spent the past 5 years obsessed with the data cores recovered from destroyed Valdorian ships, searching for anything that might help humanity prepare for future threats. What she found instead was something far more profound and disturbing. The crystalline invaders had been meticulous record keepers. Every battle, every encounter with human forces, every tactical decision had been preserved in their vast digital archives. Most of it was military intelligence, useful for understanding how the war had been won, but not particularly relevant to peacetime research. The neural scan data was different. Elena had almost overlooked it completely, dismissing it as routine biological surveys conducted on captured or killed humans. But as she delved deeper into the files, she began to realize what she was seeing. The Valdorians hadn't just recorded basic biological information. They had captured complete neural patterns, detailed maps of synaptic activity, memory formation, and the electrochemical processes that constituted human consciousness. The resolution was extraordinary, far beyond anything human science could achieve. And among the thousands of scans in their databases, Two patterns stood out with remarkable clarity and completeness. The aliens had captured the neural activity of Captain Sarah Chen and Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez in the final moments before their deaths, preserving their thoughts, memories, and the very essence of who they were. Elena stared at the data displays showing the intricate patterns of two minds in their last seconds of life. Even through the alien technology, she could see the love that had connected them, the courage that had driven them, and the determination that had enabled them to sacrifice everything for humanity's future. "My God," she whispered to the empty laboratory, "they're still here." The realization that consciousness might survive bodily death in some form was staggering enough, but the implications went far beyond philosophy or religion. If human neural patterns could be preserved and analyzed, might it be possible to restore them? Could the dead be brought back to life? Alina began working 18-hour days, driven by an obsession that concerned her colleagues and worried her friends. She neglected her health, forgot to eat, and rarely slept, pouring all her energy into understanding the alien technology that had captured two souls in their moment of greatest heroism. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday evening 6 months later. Elena had been experimenting with quantum processing matrices, trying to create a computational environment capable of supporting the complexity of human consciousness. The mathematics was staggering. Each human mind contained the equivalent of several billion quantum computers, processing information in ways that pushed the boundaries of known physics. But the Valdorian computers were designed for exactly this kind of complexity. Their crystalline matrices could handle quantum calculations that would burn out human processors in microseconds. And they had been doing it for thousands of years, developing their technology far beyond anything humanity could imagine.
The first test was simple. Could she create a stable environment where the preserved neural patterns could exist? Not consciousness, not yet, but something analogous to a complex dream state where memories and personality could persist.
The quantum matrix hummed to life, its crystalline components glowing with soft blue light. Data flowed through processing channels that operated on principles Elena was only beginning to understand. And gradually, patterns began to emerge in the computational field. Fragments of memory, emotional responses, the ghostly echoes of two minds reaching across death toward each other. "Sarah,"
Elena whispered to the swelling displays.
"Marcus, can you hear me?" The response was not words or images, but something deeper, a sense of recognition, of gratitude, and beneath it all an unbreakable bond of love that had somehow survived the destruction of flesh and bone. Elena wept, not just for the miracle she was witnessing, but for the profound loneliness she sensed in those fragmentary patterns. They were aware, on some level, but trapped in a digital limbo between life and death, conscious enough to remember what they had lost, but powerless to reconnect with the world they had died to save. The next phase of the project took another 2 years. Elena assembled a team of the world's finest experts in neurology, quantum computing, and consciousness studies. Together they worked to create something unprecedented in human history, artificial bodies capable of supporting the full complexity of transferred human consciousness. The bodies were based on Valdorian biotechnology, grown from stem cells and enhanced with crystalline neural interfaces. They looked human in every way that mattered, but they were stronger, more resilient, and capable of interfacing directly with computer systems. They were, Elena realized, the next step in human evolution. The first successful transfer took place on a cold morning in December, 7 years after the end of the war. Elena stood before the 2 growth chambers where Sarah and Marcus's new bodies lay waiting, their faces peaceful in artificial sleep. The quantum processors hummed with the captured patterns of 2 heroes, ready to bridge the gap between digital preservation and physical existence. "Beginning neural transfer," Elena announced to her team. "All systems show green. Initiating consciousness integration in 3, 2, 1. Light flowed through the crystalline interfaces as 2 minds that had been separated by death found their way back to physical form. Neural pathways blazed to life, memories cascaded through synthetic synapses, and gradually 2 chests began to rise and fall with the rhythm of breathing. Sarah opened her eyes first, blinking in confusion at the unfamiliar laboratory ceiling. Her new body felt strange, stronger than she remembered, more responsive to her thoughts, but unmistakably her own. She sat up slowly, testing the sensation of movement after years of digital existence. "Dr. Vasquez?" Her voice was the same, carrying the same quiet authority that had made her such an effective leader. "What? How is this possible?" Elena moved to her side, tears streaming down her face. "Welcome back, Sarah. You've been gone for 7 years. Marcus stirred in the adjacent chamber, his eyes opening to find Sarah watching him with an expression of wonder and disbelief. For a moment neither of them spoke. afraid that words might break the spell and send them back into digital oblivion. Then Marcus smiled, the same warm expression that had sustained Sarah through 2 years of impossible warfare. Did we win? You won, Elena assured them both. Your sacrifice saved humanity. The Valdorians are gone, Earth is safe, and 7 billion people owe their lives to what you did. Sarah and Marcus looked at each other, sharing a moment of perfect communication that needed no words. They had died believing their mission had failed, that their love story would end in darkness and defeat. To learn that their sacrifice had meaning, that their deaths had purchased humanity's future, was almost too much to process. The virus worked? Sarah asked, her scientific mind already analyzing the implications. Better than we hoped. The entire Valdorian fleet was disabled within minutes of upload. Admiral Martinez led the counterattack that finished them off. Elena paused, studying their faces carefully. Do you remember the last moments on the Retribution? Sarah nodded slowly. Marcus came through the breach. We uploaded the virus. Then she touched her chest, as if expecting to find energy burns. We died together. The Valdorians recorded your neural patterns in the moments before destruction. It took me years to decode the data and develop the technology to restore you, but you never really left us. Your minds have been preserved in their computers all this time. Marcus was flexing his hands, marveling at the sensation of fingers that responded to his thoughts with perfect precision. These bodies, they're not entirely human, are they? Enhanced biology based on Valdorian biotechnology, Elena confirmed. You're stronger, faster, more resilient than baseline humans. You can interface directly with computer systems and survive in environments that would kill ordinary people. In a sense, you've become something new, the first of a hybrid species. Sarah absorbed this information with the calm acceptance that had always characterized her approach to impossible situations. Why? Why bring us back? The war is over, humanity is safe. What do you need us for? Elena's expression grew troubled. Because the war isn't really over. The Valdorians were just one threat in a universe full of dangers. Deep space monitoring stations have detected signals from other alien civilizations, and not all of them appear friendly. Humanity needs defenders, protectors who understand the price of freedom. She gestured toward the laboratory windows, where the lights of New Geneva sparkled in the evening darkness. Those people out there are building families, creating art, pushing the boundaries of science and exploration. They're living the future you died to give them. But someone needs to stand watch to make sure that future remains secure. Sarah and Marcus looked at each other again, communication flowing between them through channels deeper than words. They had been given something beyond their wildest dreams, not just life, but a life together, free from the constant threat of extinction that had defined their first existence. But with that gift came responsibility. They were no longer quite human, but they were not yet something entirely other. They stood at the threshold between two worlds, uniquely positioned to defend the species they had died to save. What do you want us to do? Marcus asked, though Sarah could see in his eyes that he already knew the answer. Elena smiled, recognizing the same courage and determination that had once brought down a Valdorian battleship with a single shot. I want you to do what you've always done, stand guard over humanity's future. Train others to face the threats that are coming, and remind everyone that sometimes, love really is the deadliest weapon of all. Sarah stood up from the growth chamber, testing the full range of her new body's capabilities. Her enhanced muscles responded with power she had never possessed in life, and her augmented senses picked up details that would have been invisible to human perception. She was no longer just a sniper. She was something far more dangerous and far more necessary. When do we start? She asked, her voice carrying the same quiet confidence that had once steadied nervous soldiers before impossible battles. Elena looked out the window at the city sleeping peacefully in the darkness, protected by heroes it didn't know had returned from the dead. Tomorrow. Tonight, you rest. You've both earned that much. As Elena left them alone in the laboratory, Sarah and Marcus walked to the windows overlooking the city they had died to save. New Geneva sparkled with the lights of 7 million people living free from fear, building the future with their own hands, daring to dream of tomorrow because two people had loved each other enough to face impossible odds. Do you think we made the right choice? Marcus asked, his hand finding Sarah's in the darkness. Coming back, I mean. We could have stayed wherever we were. Together, at peace. Sarah intertwined her fingers with his, marveling at the sensation of touch after years of digital existence. Look at them, she said, nodding toward the lights below. Children playing in gardens, artists creating beauty, scientists reaching for the stars. We gave them this chance once, and now we get to protect it again.
Marcus pulled her close, and Sarah felt the same sense of perfect completion that had always marked their partnership. Death had not diminished their bond. If anything, the shared experience of digital preservation and resurrection had strengthened it beyond anything merely human. Together, he asked, echoing the question that had defined their relationship from the beginning. Always, Sarah replied, leaning into his embrace as they watched the city sleep in peaceful ignorance of the guardians who had returned to watch over it. They were no longer the people who had died aboard the Retribution 7 years earlier.
They were something new, something evolved, something perfectly suited to stand between humanity and the darkness that waited beyond the stars. They were living proof that love could conquer even death, that sacrifice had meaning, and that heroes could indeed get their happy endings. But tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, and new opportunities to prove that the human spirit, however enhanced or evolved, remained unbreakable in the face of impossible odds. Tonight, though, there was simply Sarah and Marcus, together again after too long apart, ready to face whatever came next as partners, lovers, and the guardians of humanity's bright future. 3 months after their resurrection, Sarah and Marcus faced their first real test as humanity's new guardians. The Deep Space Monitoring Stations had detected an anomaly in the outer system, energy signatures that suggested another alien presence. This one far more subtle and potentially more dangerous than the Valdorians had ever been. Sarah stood in the briefing room aboard the newly constructed Starship Redemption, studying tactical displays that showed readings from the edge of human space. The ship itself was a marvel of hybrid technology, built from the fusion of human engineering and recovered Valdorian systems. It was fast, well-armed, and capable of operations far beyond Earth's solar system. But more importantly, it was crewed by volunteers who understood what they were signing up for. These were the children of the Resistance. Men and women who had grown up during the war and chosen to dedicate their lives to ensuring it never happened again. They looked at Sarah and Marcus not as curiosities or reanimated corpses, but as the heroes who had saved their world. "The signals are definitely artificial," reported Dr. James Liu, the ship's chief science officer. "But they're not following any pattern we recognize from Valdorian technology. Whatever's out there, it's something new." Marcus studied the trajectory data from his position at the tactical station. His enhanced reflexes and computer interface capabilities made him the perfect pilot for humanity's most advanced spacecraft, able to react to threats faster than any purely human operator. "How long until we reach the source?" he asked. 6 days at maximum acceleration," Liu replied. "But Captain, I should warn you, the signals stopped transmitting about 12 hours ago. Whatever was out there might be gone by the time we arrive." Sarah felt a familiar chill of intuition, the same instinct that had made her such an effective sniper in her previous life. "Or it might be waiting for us. Something that can monitor our deep space stations might also be capable of detecting our approach." The journey to the outer system passed in a mixture of preparation and anticipation. Sarah spent her time training with the ship's weapons systems, marveling at how her enhanced reflexes and computer interface capabilities had transformed her from merely excellent to something approaching superhuman. She could process targeting information faster than any purely biological mind, calculate trajectory solutions that would have required minutes of computation, and maintain perfect accuracy, even under the most extreme conditions. Marcus immersed himself in the ship's flight systems, learning every nuance of the hybrid technology that powered the Redemption. The ship responded to his thoughts as much as his hands, its Valdorian-derived navigation systems interpreting his intentions and translating them into precise course corrections. He was no longer just a pilot, he was part of the ship itself, connected to its systems in ways that previous generations of humans could never have achieved. But both of them were thinking about more than just technology and tactics. They were adjusting to their new existence, learning what it meant to be alive again after years of digital preservation. Their enhanced bodies required different nutrition, responded differently to stress and fatigue, and possessed capabilities that still surprised them. More challenging was the psychological adjustment. They had memories of dying, of existing in a realm between consciousness and oblivion, and of being slowly reconstructed from preserved neural patterns. The experience had changed them in subtle ways that they were still discovering. "Do you ever wonder what we are now?" Sarah asked Marcus during one of their off-duty periods, as they stood together on the ship's observation deck watching the stars stream past. "Human," Marcus replied without hesitation. "Enhanced, evolved, maybe even improved in some ways, but still fundamentally us. We love, we fear, we hope for the future. All the things that make people human."
But we're also weapons, Sarah pointed out.
Created specifically to defend humanity from threats they can't handle themselves. Sometimes I wonder if we're more like guardians or soldiers than people. Marcus considered this, his enhanced mind processing the philosophical implications faster than would have been possible in his original body. Maybe we're both. Maybe that's exactly what humanity needs. People who are still human enough to remember what they're fighting for, but powerful enough to actually win. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent signal from the bridge. Captain Zhang, the Redemption's commanding officer, appeared on the intercom with news that sent both of them racing for their stations. We've reached the target coordinates, and we're detecting multiple contacts. Whatever's out here, it's bigger than we thought. On the bridge, the main display showed a sight that made Sarah's enhanced senses sing with danger. Floating in the darkness beyond Pluto's orbit was a structure that defied easy categorization. It was clearly artificial, but its design was unlike anything in human experience or Valdorian records. The structure appeared to be grown rather than built, its organic curves and flowing lines suggesting a civilization that approached technology from a completely different philosophical perspective. It was massive, easily the size of a small moon, and it was clearly active, with energy patterns flowing through its crystalline matrix like blood through veins. Any response to our hail? Captain Zhang asked the communications officer. Nothing on standard frequencies, sir. But we are detecting some kind of focused transmission aimed directly at us. It's not using any protocol we recognize. Sarah moved to the sensor station, her computer interface allowing her to process the incoming data stream directly through her neural implants. What she found there made her enhancement systems flood her bloodstream with combat stimulants. It's not a transmission, she announced to the bridge. It's a scan. Something is analyzing our ship, our technology, and... She paused, her enhanced senses detecting something that would have been invisible to purely human perception. It's scanning us. Our biological signatures, our neural patterns, everything that makes us who we are. Marcus was already moving toward the pilot station, his connection to the ship systems allowing him to bring weapons and defenses online faster than any human crew could manage. Captain, I recommend we withdraw to a safe distance and call for reinforcements. But before Captain Zhang could respond, the alien structure began to change. Sections of its organic hull shifted and flowed like liquid, revealing openings that had not been there moments before. And from those openings, ships began to emerge. The vessels were as organic-looking as their parent structure, but their intent was unmistakably hostile. They moved with predatory grace, surrounding the Redemption in a complex three-dimensional formation that suggested tactical sophistication far beyond what the Valdorians had ever displayed. Red alert, Captain Zhang ordered. All hands to battle stations. Sarah, Marcus, this is what we trained for. Sarah felt the familiar calm that had always preceded her greatest shots, settling over her like a comfortable blanket. Her enhanced reflexes and computer-assisted targeting systems turned the ship's weapons into extensions of her will, able to track and engage multiple targets with inhuman precision. Marcus merged his consciousness with the Redemption's flight systems, feeling the ship's capabilities as if they were his own limbs. Every thruster, every structural stress point, every possible maneuver became part of his enhanced awareness. He was no longer just piloting the ship, he was the ship, moving through space with purpose and deadly grace. The first alien vessel attacked without warning, its weapons firing some kind of energy beam that passed through the Redemption shields as if they didn't exist. The beam struck the ship's hull and began to analyze its molecular structure, clearly attempting to find weaknesses that could be exploited. Sarah's response was immediate and devastating. Her targeting system locked onto the attacking vessel's weapon array, and the Redemption's main gun fired a concentrated burst of energy that struck with surgical precision. The alien ship's weapon exploded in a cascade of organic fragments, sending it spinning away from the formation. But there were dozens more, and they were learning from their companion's fate. The next wave of attacks came from multiple directions simultaneously, forcing Marcus to perform maneuvers that pushed both the ship and his own enhanced capabilities to their limits. The battle that followed was unlike anything in human military experience. The alien vessels moved like living creatures, adapting their tactics in real time and coordinating their attacks with hive mind efficiency. Their weapons seemed designed to analyze and exploit weaknesses rather than simply destroy, suggesting a civilization that preferred to understand before they conquered. But Sarah and Marcus were no longer bound by purely human limitations. Their enhanced reflexes and computer-assisted capabilities allowed them to match the aliens' speed and exceed their precision.
More importantly, their love for each other and for humanity gave them something the hive mind creatures seemed to lack: the ability to fight for something greater than mere survival.
I'm reading a command structure in the alien formation, Sarah reported, her targeting system identifying the key vessel controlling the other's movements.
If I can disable their coordinator, the rest might lose their tactical advantage. It's protected by 6 escorts, Marcus replied, his enhanced awareness tracking every ship in the enemy formation. I can get you a shot, but it'll have to be perfect. We won't get a second chance. Sarah smiled, feeling the same confidence that had once enabled her to bring down a Valdorian battleship. When have I ever needed a second chance? Marcus threw the Redemption into a complex spiral dive that brought them below the alien formation's defensive screen. Sarah's targeting system locked onto the command vessel just as its escorts moved to intercept, and she fired at the exact moment when Marcus's maneuver created a perfect firing solution. The shot was impossible by any conventional standard, threading through a gap between escort ships that existed for less than 2 seconds, striking a target that was moving at relativistic speeds, and penetrating defenses that had adapted to every previous attack. But Sarah was no longer bound by conventional standards. Her enhanced reflexes, computer-assisted targeting, and perfect understanding of ballistics combined to create a moment of absolute precision. The energy beam struck the alien command ship exactly where Sarah had intended, disabling its coordination systems without destroying the vessel entirely. Immediately, the other alien ships began to falter, their coordinated attacks dissolving into confused individual maneuvers. But the victory came with a price. The command ship's death throes released some kind of psychic scream that resonated through space itself. The sound was felt rather than heard, a wave of pure anguish and rage that struck every human mind within range. Sarah staggered at her station, her enhanced neural systems overloaded by the alien transmission. Around her, the bridge crew collapsed, clutching their heads as the psychic assault overwhelmed their consciousness. Only her and Marcus remained standing, their hybrid biology providing some protection against the mental attack. The structure, Marcus gasped, fighting to maintain control of the ship as the alien scream continued to pound against their minds. It's responding to the command ship's destruction. Something's waking up in there. Through her targeting scope, Sarah could see the massive alien structure beginning to glow with increasing intensity. Energy patterns that had flowed gently through its organic matrix were now blazing like rivers of fire, and sections of its hull were opening to reveal what looked like weapon systems on a scale that dwarfed anything humanity had ever conceived. "We need to get out of here," she said, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew it was too late. The structure was powering up some kind of weapon that would destroy not just the Redemption, but potentially everything in the outer system. Sarah looked at Marcus and saw her own realization reflected in his eyes. They had faced this choice before. Aboard the Retribution 7 years earlier, one of them could escape to warn humanity, or both of them could stay and try to prevent catastrophe. This time, there was no debate. "Together," Marcus said simply, his hands already moving across the ship's control systems. "Always," Sarah replied, bringing the Redemption's weapons online for one final shot. They had seconds before the alien superweapon reached full power. Sarah's enhanced targeting systems analyzed the structure's energy patterns, looking for any weakness they could exploit. Meanwhile, Marcus pushed the ship's engines beyond their safety limits, accelerating directly toward the alien structure at speeds that would turn them into a kinetic weapon. "There," Sarah announced, highlighting a nexus point where multiple energy streams converged near the structure's core. "If I can hit that junction with everything we have, the feedback might cause a cascade failure." "Range in 15 seconds, Marcus reported. "But we'll be well within the destruction radius when that thing goes up." Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the same perfect calm that had sustained her through 2 lifetimes of impossible battles. Her hands moved across the weapon controls with enhanced precision, preparing to make the most important shot of either of her lives. "Sarah," Marcus said quietly, "whatever happens next, I want you to know that getting to love you has been the greatest privilege of my existence." "Mine too," she replied, tears streaming down her face as her targeting system achieved perfect lock. "See you on the other side." The Redemption's main gun fired every joule of energy in the ship's power grid, sending a concentrated beam of destruction toward the nexus point at the heart of the alien structure. At the same moment, Marcus crashed their ship into the structure's outer hull at nearly 10% the speed of light. The explosion that followed lit up the outer system like a new star, The alien structure's cascade failure released energies that had been building for eons, creating a brief supernova that was visible from Earth with the naked eye. When the light finally faded, there was nothing left but dispersing gas and the echo of gravitational waves rippling through space-time. Sarah and Marcus died again, vaporized in an instant of brilliant light. But this time, they died knowing beyond any doubt that their sacrifice had meaning, that their love had once again saved the people and world they cherished above life itself. On Earth, Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the distant explosion through her observatory's telescopes and wept for the friends she had lost twice. But she also smiled, because she knew that somewhere in the alien wreckage, quantum storage systems were probably recording neural patterns again, preserving the essence of two souls who had proven that love really was stronger than death. The message arrived at Earth 3 days after the explosion, transmitted through quantum entanglement channels that the dying alien structure had used as a final act. It was addressed to the leaders of humanity, written in perfect English by minds that had learned their language in the moments before destruction. "We are the shepherds," the message began. "For millions of years we have watched younger species grow and evolve, testing their worthiness to join the greater community of sapient life. Most fail the test, consumed by their own aggression or destroyed by their own ignorance. But you humans are different. In your darkest hour, when extinction seemed certain, you produced individuals capable of transcending their own limitations. Sarah Chen and Marcus Rodriguez have twice proven that love and sacrifice can triumph over impossible odds. Their courage has earned your species recognition as true inheritors of the galaxy's future. We name you worthy. The stars await your exploration, and we will guide your first steps into the larger universe. Your guardians have purchased a future beyond your wildest dreams." The message went on to provide coordinates for other sapient species, trade routes through the galaxy, and technologies that would advance human civilization by thousands of years. But Elena barely noticed these treasures. She was focused on a single line buried deep in the transmission's metadata. Quantum consciousness preservation protocols have been implemented. Your guardians await reconstruction at coordinates provided. Elena laughed through her tears, already beginning to plan another resurrection project. Sarah and Marcus had died heroes twice, but their story was far from over. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and humanity would need guides who understood both the price of freedom and the power of love. Somewhere in the quantum foam between dimensions, two souls waited patiently for their third chance at life. Secure in the knowledge that whatever came next, they would face it together. They had learned that love transcended death, that sacrifice had meaning, and that heroes really could get their happy ending. It had just taken longer than expected. Years later, children across human space would grow up hearing the story of Sarah Chen and Marcus Rodriguez, the guardians who had died twice to protect humanity's future. They would learn that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to face impossible odds for something greater than yourself. And they would learn that in a universe full of dangers and wonders, the deadliest weapon of all was still a human heart willing to sacrifice everything for love. The pilot had been taken, but her final shot had saved not just him, but the entire human race. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered, the triumph of love over death, of hope over despair, and of two ordinary people who had found the strength to become legends. Their watch would continue, as long as humanity reached for the stars and dared to dream of tomorrow. Because some loves are strong enough to conquer death itself, and some heroes are too stubborn to stay dead when the universe still needs saving. Together, always.